Possession video. You got Aaron Rodgers Achilles snaps. Doctors explain the injury. Now, I just read into the video. I just reacted to the game highlights, so if you go watch that. But as I was reacting, I realized that they took him out, or he was no longer playing, and Zach Wilson was in. Blase. I'm like, what happened to him? They didn't replay the injury. So now I'm over here. They're talking about Achilles snaps. This is crazy. And Rodgers, first play, not first play, but one of the first plays, very few plays he got to play in the first game. This is crazy. I feel bad, but let's see what the doctor has to say. Let's look to the professional medical advice. Also, make sure to subscribe button right now. We're on 10,000 subscribers. I appreciate everyone who's hit the subscribe button, help brother out. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Earlier this evening, Aaron Rodgers suffered an injury against the Buffalo Bills, and in this video, we're going to dive
left
into what I
leg?
think might have happened to the Jets' star quarterback. Welcome back,
no,
everybody.
it's the
I'm
left
Dr.
leg,
Brian
yeah.
Suter, and my goal in this channel
second
is
time
to
it looked like
teach
he
you
may
about the
have,
medical side of the sports world. So if sports injuries and anatomy and that sort of thing
Right
interests you,
there.
please consider subscribing to stay
Where
up to
his-
date.
where his
with
leg
the channel.
planted?
Let's dive right into this. And at the time of recording, there's about 13 minutes left in the second quarter. We've heard that Rodgers
there's no
is officially
give.
questionable to return, and they're calling it an ankle injury. So what do I see on this play? What would I be thinking about? Well, number one, I think we're dealing with the left leg. I don't really see anything abnormal with the right, and so until we hear otherwise, I think we got to focus on this left calf. As he plants here, I want you to see how in this frame, everything is pretty taut in the back of his calf. We can
Real
see these
tight.
little contours. That's going to be his calf musculature. His foot is anchored and planted on the ground, and then as I advance a couple of frames, we see everything just kind of release. And it's right there in that release where I'm worried he might have suffered a significant release. And it's right there in that release where I'm worried he might have
I
suffered.
see that. It looks like the Achilles just popped. Like it's real tight, like it, and then all of a sudden it just releases, but his foot is still planted. Right. So I'm basically a doctor at this point, because I just listened to him. So his foot is all taut. I think he's the correct word he uses. Right. His whole foot's on the ground. So it's all tight, but out of nowhere, and mind you, his foot is still planted, but you can see the release and the ripple effect on his calf. By the way, Aaron Rodgers has a lot more developed calf than I thought he would have.
A significant calf injury, potentially even an Achilles injury, because the foot is still planted. There should still be load and tension through these muscles.
Right.
But we see everything just
It's almost like I said that exact same thing. I should become a doctor.
suffered a significant calf injury, potentially even an Achilles injury, because the foot is still planted. There should still be load and tension through these muscles, but we see everything just kind of give and release as he goes down to the ground. Now, just because we see this snap doesn't mean that it has to be an Achilles rupture. You have a third often forgotten muscle of the Achilles complex called the plantaris, and the plantaris can rupture, it can pop, it can feel like an Achilles injury. That might even be the little bit of contour that we're seeing right there in the middle of the back of the calf. And if that ruptures, it's not a big deal. It's not really a functional muscle. It certainly is not going to put anybody out for an extended period of time. So my hope is maybe that's all we're seeing here.
How often have we actually seen that? Let's be honest. I mean, I'm all for holding out hope for Aaron Rodgers because no one wants to see Aaron Rodgers get hurt. But let's be for real. It's more likely an Achilles.
But this position, his ankle is dorsiflexed, meaning the foot is pointed upwards. The calf is going to be loaded. He gets driven down, and there's a stretch in the back of the calf that certainly could put somebody at risk of something like an Achilles injury. And we've all, of course, seen that dreaded snap, that kind of pop where everything almost recoils higher up in the leg. If his foot had come off the ground before this, I would say, well, the muscle tension was just released. That would be expected. But the heel is still planted when we almost see that release of the energy. Another important view to look at here, just because initially I was wondering about a foot, because all I saw was this first view. If we look at how his left foot is planted into the ground, he then kind of comes and on this step right here, now this is after we've seen that kind of pop in the back of the calf, look how awkwardly his foot gets twisted. This kind of loading position of the foot almost looks to me like potential Liz Frank when we see that load through a plantar flexed load going through the midfoot. But
So what you're saying is you don't even know what the hell he has. You're just a doctor who titled the video, Aaron Rodgers Achilles snaps. Doctor explains the injuries when you don't even know what the hell happened. You're over here talking about a Liz Frank. Liz Frank and this is not the same thing. So I'm confused on why you're confused on why you're telling me what you're telling me. And you don't even know what you're talking about.
the pop had happened before this in the back of the calf. So I think if this ends up coming out, and sometimes ankle versus foot, we kind of lose sight of all this. I would wonder about the Liz Frank in his foot just from this awkward sort of twist that he has on his ankle. But again, this initial kind of pop that we see in the back, I'll walk through it again. Foot goes down, ankle gets forced up into dorsiflexion. That stretches everything on the back side of the leg. We see initial tension right there. And then as we go a couple frames later, the foot is still loaded, the heel is still on the ground, but we see everything sort of release, suggesting to me that there's a high chance that there's been some type of injury to the back of the leg here, whether it was just a high-grade calf strain or something more significant like an Achilles. Don't forget about that plantaris muscle, though, because that can be involved and can isolate.
But back to the video.
Snap here, whether it was just a high-grade calf strain or something more significant like an Achilles. Don't forget about that plantaris muscle, though, because that can be involved and can isolate and can pop and snap and not at all be a significant thing. So that would be my concern just based on these initial plays and what we've heard so far from Rodgers. Let me know any questions or comments down below. We'll keep the channel updated as soon as we hear more. And thank you as always for watching. Bye.
Make sure you subscribe button. Make sure you like, subscribe. Deuces.